Hi,
Amy.
guys.
Amy Chella.
Can you tell me again what the application is, just real quick? I'm kidding.
Amy said a funny.
It's hilarious.
Gosh.
Apparently,
Yeah, well,
I'm trying to give us some ruptures to repair.
Oh, you're good at that.
yeah.
Yes.
We need to get out this podcast so we can get
So
after
we
that.
can, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We got work to do.
Okay, a couple of things stood out to me, and Kurt, you brought this up earlier in the season, and then a little bit at the beginning of this episode. But it was what kind of rupture and repair system we were raised in, and it just hits me again that, like, I will share mine. There's a 2-sentence. The one I was, don't bring it up. And if you do bring it up, apologize and change your behavior until I'm happy. So knowing... Fabulous. For the win.
Gosh.
So I think that's, as I do repair work, one, identifying what our system was that we were raised in, and then just like being mindful of that as I go in to do repair work. Like my propensity, there will always be a propensity. I'll have the propensity to avoid it and apologize.
Yeah, right.
And that served me when I was 7. Mm-hmm. It doesn't serve me so well now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And then that this work is not hurried. Like as you two were talking about all the components and the fact that relationships are not binary. You know, that, it is all or, if it were all or nothing, in some ways that would be easier. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Kurt, I think it might have been before we were recording or at some point you mentioned, like, if we're in a relationship, if we have an ex-spouse and we share children, we are going to be in that relationship whether we want to or not.
Right.
And finding that place is a hard work.
Right.
And that's a lifetime. Like,
yeah. I think, as a newly minted grandfather,
yes,
one of the things, I'm delighted to be a grandfather of little Simon Curtis. But I think immediately what Phyllis and I are both aware of is how grateful we are for the relationship that we have with Simon's parents, our daughter and our son-in-law. I'm so grateful for that. And I've had, we have lots of encounters with people who their relationship with their parents are really difficult, but they want their parents to have a relationship with their own kids, right? That the parents, their grandkid, they want the parents to know their grandchildren.
Right.
But the parents don't behave well.
The parents don't or the grandparents don't?
I'm sorry. The grandparents.
Right.
The grandparents don't behave well. And like, how, this is tricky. Mm-hmm. This is tricky. Like, well, do I want my kids to stay over for the weekend? Am I with my parents who I think continue to behave badly?
Right.
Like, how do we do this? And again, it becomes, the more urgent, the more anxiety I carry about this, the more urgently and the more swiftly I want to make a black and white decision. Just working to flexibly and adaptively, have these boundaries. And this is where support and resourcing from outside people for me is so crucially important.
He's got to work it out if he wants to be in a relationship. He's got to figure out something. And that's a tough one there.
Well, and they both have to work it out, right?
And the power gradient has switched there because the parents really the grandparent is not the one in power anymore. The power gradient is now turned upside down in his life. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. This. I mean, it's so. It's tricky, and this is where I think, though. Just imagine for a moment. I mean, my guess is, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point this will become true for Phyllis and me. That I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, because this is a common thing, right?
Yep.
Your own children are going to parent somewhat differently than you do about certain things. And I think then the question becomes, well, how able am I? Just naming, like, well, what we get about, what do I want? What do I want? Mm-hmm. I want to be comfortable and confident with Rachel and Noah, our daughter and son-in-law. I really want to be that. And that may mean that does not mean that necessarily that they and I are on the same exact blueprinted page,
right, about
how to parent. But what would it be like for me to have a conversation with them about wanting to be connected and acknowledging that this is hard for us. This is hard for us. We're not saying this is hard for us, therefore you need to change your parenting. We're simply saying this is hard for us. We'd love, and we're acknowledging that, and that we are working at this.
Because I'll go back to your want, and what your want is, you want to be in relationship with them and your grandchildren. That's right. So yeah. But I love that. I love going to on that. It is challenging, but having those conversations, yeah.
And I'm grateful that I have children who are willing to have these kinds of conversations. Like I've had other folks who have, their kids are just like they've cut them out.
Yeah.
Well, and they're willing to have those conversations because it was modeled for them, right? That's probably their go-to, is to have these conversations.
Right. Yeah.
The other thing that struck me, did you have more, see? Is that, like, getting someone to the table, like, sometimes we can get them to the table, but then is that best? Because if they've been to the table before, it's so nuanced. It's so... And that's why we don't go quickly. And that's why we say it out loud to each other. Yeah.
Right. Well, I think, we've said this, and we say this to people who are in these situations. You want to go to this party and say, I would love to have a conversation about this. And if they are not willing to do it, and depending upon what you want, then you can bring somebody else to say, I'd like to have this conversation with you. You can bring, again, this outside, this model in Matthew 18 of outside resourcing. You're bringing your community with you to have this conversation. And if they're not willing to do that, then this is the thing. Jesus talks about this. Paul talks about this in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, because they've got a person in the community in Corinth that is behaving badly, and they're just getting away with it. And Paul says, you need to put him out. And I mean, like, oh my gosh, like we would have a complete allergic reaction to this notion that we're going to put somebody out. Now, there are certain, we put people out all the time, right, on social media, but if you put somebody out, but Paul's very clear, for the purpose of his restoration. Mm-hmm. You're not putting him out to get rid of him, like he's now persona non grata. It is for the purpose of him learning that, like, we want you to come back. And later, there is the sense that this person was reinstated. But you can't you can't do this without support from outside people helping you to do this. Because then we would say, look, if you go to whoever the parties are and you say, I want to work on this, and they say they come to the table but they're not willing to repair, or they come to the table and they tell a completely different story than the one that's actually happened, and you say, okay, I guess you're not able to do this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. Next week we have our
Thanks,
Q&A.
guys.
Yeah, right on.
So Kurt, you don't have to do any work this week. Just have to react when we're recording next week. You don't have to do any preparation. You finally get a week of no prep. Anyway, love you guys.
Love you
Love
guys.
you guys. Yep. See you next week.
See you next week.